Why is this not working? Oh, it is working. Okay. Can we work now, please? Hi. Can anyone see me or hear me? It's being very weird. Just FYI. YouTube is not acting normally today. So, okay, well, it's showing up on that screen. Got your 5x5. Okay, good. The back end on YouTube is telling me that there's an error. An error occurred. Please try again later, but it seems to be streaming and I couldn't tell. Okay, good. That's good to hear. It's been weird. I was a little late because of that, and also because at the last second I realized I should really close the den, which is where the modem is, and I had to kick Margot out of there because she 9 times out of 10 is the one who resets the internet by jumping down behind the TV. So anyway, we should be hopefully okay. But then YouTube was being weird. Excuse me. So anyway, I hope you folks are doing well. There's so much different chatter going on. My goodness gracious. Let's see here. Been under a heat dome. Yeah, we've been under a moist dome. It has just been. It rained all day yesterday, and a good portion of Friday. And today it is only 63, but it is just humid, oppressively humid, something like 90%. So that's fun. But I hope that everyone is doing okay and isn't too affected by the weather wherever you live. Let's see here. Really enjoy your content. Thank you for everything you do for the community. You are better. We are better because you are here. Well, that's very nice of you to say. I appreciate that. There, Duke Liberty. Been taking advantage of the heat by casting equipment out and making some toy soldiers. Well, that's fun. Morning from Quebec. How you doing? Greetings from Sussex, where I've just finished painting my Core Space core set minis. Nice. BJ Morph, how you doing? Good morning from Iowa. BF Bulldog, howdy. Anyone know what that art is from? That art is from the game Blackout. Blkout, which I'll be talking about in a bit. But if you just type in Blackout game, but it's Blkout, you type that into Google, you can find their website. So much easier to find indie games today because of the internet. It's true. Very true. Morning from Winnipeg. Continuing the design and build of a custom hobby station. Nice. Morning from Cleveland. Ontario, Germany, humid Tennessee. Looking forward to hobbying. Nice. Game 7 Stanley Cup. My wife is very excited. Too hot and humid here, North Italy, to do anything hobby related, be it paint or build, sadly. Friday's video was great. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Love how you advocate for minis agnostic games. Indeed. Running from a sweltering Washington, D.C. I hope it's not sweltering in another month and a week or so, because I will be in Washington, D.C. for Nova at the end of July. No, that's not true. 2 months. 2 months and a week. The end of August is when I will be there. I'll be at Gen Con at the end of July. There we go. Just setting up tonight's game of Frosthaven. Nice. Watamaton, how you doing? Morning from St. Louis, Missouri. Working on High Fleet Gorgon scheme, Winged Prime. Excited to try OPR with my 7-year-old. Nice. Ahoy from Damp, Ohio. Yeah. Received the box starter for the Warlord Games Judge Dredd Miniatures game yesterday, and early birthday gift to myself. Nice. I picked that up too, and I need to start building. But I've got other projects currently, unfortunately, that are in the way. Morning from Queensland. Montreal, West Midlands, UK, Newfoundland, sunny and warm. Nice. Clearwater, Florida. How you doing? Shout out to Tabletop Skirmish Games by Lee and Nicholas Foxsmith. Population Z and Rogue Warriors. Nice. Castleberry, Florida. Poland. Sunny 26 degrees Celsius. Dusseldorf, Germany. How you doing? Have you played or looked into 5 Parsecs from Home? There looks to be a larger skirmish expansion book coming soon. I've been hearing that there's going to be like a not army size, but more models. Yeah, I'm familiar with it. I have 5 Parsecs. Do I have 5 Leagues from the Borderlands? I don't know that I do. I think I just have 5 Parsecs, and I have I've messed around with it some. Yeah, it's a good system. I'm glad that they're doing well with it. Jay Arnold says indie war games are where it's at. I agree. Hello from Too Hot Salt Lake City, painting some Black Templars and trying to stay indoors. Nice. Good morning from the Great Lakes State. Which one is that one? Is that, I'm assuming is it Michigan? I don't know. You guys are kind of surrounded, I suppose. Isn't that the new British Army service rifle? I don't know. The game's supposed to take place, Blackout takes place like in near the year 2200, and it's on a different planet. So maybe. Let's see here. So people could hear me. That's good. I couldn't tell at first. So what exactly is an indie game? Seems like a description that doesn't actually really mean anything. Oh, it means lots of stuff. Indie games are games that are made by generally smaller companies. You know, the games that are not widely distributed in stores. Obviously, Games Workshop stuff is not what I would call indie. I would say Bolt Action's not indie. I would say that Mantic's not particularly indie. I would say that technically, like, War Machine's not indie. It has gotten to a point where it's harder and harder to find, but now they've been bought by Steamforged Games, so we'll see how that goes. But I mean, probably pretty well. But yeah, no, generally indie games are small games that these days you more often than not have to try to find someplace online to buy because stores don't carry them. Now, to be fair to stores, most stores just carry Games Workshop. Like, literally, that's it. If they're going to carry miniatures at all, they carry, well, maybe Games Workshop and maybe some WizKids and maybe a little bit of Reaper, maybe. But those WizKids and Reaper models are more for the Dungeons and Dragons folks. And that's just the way it works. It's not that they don't want to carry Infinity and Bolt Action and, Mantic and stuff like that. It just doesn't sell as well, and they only have a limited amount of space. That's just kind of the way it works. You find certain stores that do carry certain things outside of Games Workshop from time to time. But it's more often than not because there's some sort of product champion, if you will, or agitator, or I used to call them alpha gamers, but that's not a good connotation so much anymore, in my opinion. But there are people who are like, look, I'm going to start teaching people how to play Malifaux. And then there you go. I wouldn't say Malifaux is an indie game either, because they've got lots and lots of like hard plastic models, and though they're a smaller company probably now than they were 10 years ago, they're still a decent sized company. So indie games are generally designed and published and sold by small groups of people, a couple of people, maybe 3 or 4 people max. That's generally what an indie game is. Let's see here. Good evening from chilly Western Australia. Teaching myself the Arkham horror game while listening in tonight. Nice. Everyone's good on sound and video. That's good. Oh dear, everything moved. Let me... Jim just said that he was getting, no, we got no drop frames over here. Had some drop frames yesterday in the show that I did, the Patreon show yesterday. That one I noticed there were some drop frames, and I was like, well, that's weird. Oh, also to the folks who were at the Patreon show yesterday, I said I was going to set this camera to auto ISO so I wouldn't have to change it when the sun comes out and the sun goes away and the sun. Yeah, it turns out you can't do that with this camera. Not when you can do it in photography mode, but you can't do it in video mode. And even if you had a camera maybe that does it in video mode, it probably doesn't do it when you're not actually recording. Like, this camera is a normal, like, kind of, interchangeable lens, what they call a mirrorless camera. And it's not recording right now. It's just sitting there, and it's sending data to OBS, which thinks that it's a webcam. So yeah, that's not going to work. I said I was going to set this so that I wouldn't have to constantly go up here and mess with it. But that's actually, as it turned out, I tried it last night, and it's not a thing. Did a bunch of research and even looked on Reddit a whole bunch, and they're like, no, you can't do that. At least not with this camera. So I'll have to look at some other cameras and see what happens. But I just don't want to like buy an expensive camera that just literally sits there and just does that and does nothing else. So, but I'll take a look. Anyway, that's an update. Painting Rune Wars miniatures. Nice. Have you heard of the Hobby Homies since you're an Aussie? Oh, that wasn't to me. That was to somebody else. I've heard of the Hobby Homies. Hello from Amsterdam. How you doing? Afternoon in from an overcast Puckle-Church. Enjoy saying Puckle-Church. Busy making more Warlords AWI Americans today. Nice. Let's see. I know your rulebooks are online. Are there physical copies available at any FLGS? Oshkosh is within my reasonable driving distance. I mean, so Kevin, who owns Flying Phoenix Games here in Oshkosh, he does sell them, but you could also just buy them online as well. You know, if you wanted to, we do. You know, do I have a copy of? Yes, I do. So you can buy them and they will ship them to you, printed and the whole deal, you know. But if you want to buy them locally, they're not in too many stores. Actually, I don't know that Kevin has that one. He has, last I knew, Kevin has the last 3 games. He has Rain in Hell, he has Space Station Zero, and he has Majestic 13, but I don't know if he's ordered Death Wizards yet. It turns out it's only been out for about a month and 2 days at this point. So, and it's doing well. Hi from Cape Town. Magnetizing a gladiator that my kids gave me for Father's Day. Neat. Mini gangs is fun. I think I've heard of that. Chilly start to winter in years here in Australia, so I guess the temps balance out. I suppose, yeah. Going through my photos from Montreal. Was traveling with family, so I didn't take a lot, but I still have over 70 to go through. Wow. There's a lively Nordic Weasel Discord if you want to discuss their games. Cool. Morning from Milwaukee. How you doing, Jesse? Greetings from Athens, Greece. Howdy. Building and basing a random GW in Ulm, Germany. How you doing? Death Wizards takes a long time to arrive here in Greece. Yeah, it's probably getting printed in the EU, or sorry, in the UK, and then it has to get shipped over. Would take longer if it was only getting shipped in the States, I bet. Yeah. You should look into this Quar's War from Zombie Smith and Wargames Atlantic. Great figures, plastic supported by STLs on My Manufactory. The box is in the basement, but I've got the 2-player starter from this Quar's War, and I have built 3. I think the Crusaders, and I want to build 3 of the other kind now too, and then use them as test models initially to see how to do, because I'm basically, when you're building your force, there's like a standard gun that people carry. So I've built 3 with just the standard gun because I didn't want to get into it too far and then end up building, because there's limits to certain types of guns you can take. So I just wanted to use the standard gun, practice building. So I've built, like I said, 3 of the Crusaders. I'm going to build 3 of the other ones, which are, I'm mispronouncing, I'm sure. Croftians? I'm not sure. It's Welsh. Most of these Anteater people in this Quar's War seem to be Welsh. So there's a lot of random letters in there, and sometimes. Anyway, I've gotten started on it, yes. And they're on my desk. Currently, right now, what's taking the majority of my time is Spearhead. I'm working on the Skaven. I'm working on the Skaven Spearhead. I'm not crazy excited about it, frankly. I just want to get it done. So I'm trying to crank through those guys. I've got the 20 clan rats built. I've got them all primed. I've got 10 of them near finished. And I've also started working on the terrain pieces. There's 4 terrain pieces in there. I want to get that. I want to get that Spearhead done, make a video, go, hey, look at this. Okay, great. And then, go on to something else. So yeah, definitely this Quar's War is on my radar and on my desk. Would you consider smaller companies, even though they are more RPG, like Chaosium and Renegade, indie companies? How about out of print games? I mean, out of print is probably a whole different story. That's a good question. I mean, were they an indie company when they went out of print, or I mean, I don't know if like if Games Workshop stops making something, that doesn't make it indie. I don't think it's indie stands for independent. That's kind of the idea there. Chaosium and Renegade. I mean, I suppose they're Chaosium's a decent sized company. I don't know to be perfectly honest with you, what's indie and what's not within role playing games is probably not. I'm probably not the guy you should ask about that because I don't honestly know. You know what I mean? Because I don't really keep up with the war with the. I mean, I've heard of Chaosium and Renegade. If we're talking about Renegade Game Studios, I would not say they're indie. They're I've done work for them. Yeah, so they're not. I would not say they're indie. Because they're in nearly every store that you go to that sells board games. They're currently doing Transformers and GI Joe and My Little Pony card games and stuff like that. So that's. Speaking of indie games, I'm currently waiting for the new Moonstone faction to ship from Kickstarter. I met the designer at UKGE a few weeks ago. Nice. I think a guy named Matt, I think his name was Matt, ran Moonstone at TMX back at the beginning part of the month. So that was one of the games that was running and being demoed at TMX, at Tabletop Minions Expo. Any game is miniatures agnostic if you believe in yourself is a great motto that we should all accept or all adopt. I think you're not wrong. I think it's true. I've just found Revelations Skirmish/Battlefield. It's a nice combined arms sci-fi game, mechs, tanks, and infantry all being useful. That I've not heard of. OPR indie? It's making a decent amount of money, but I would still say it's indie because it is literally like, well, A, you can't get it in stores, and B, it's like 3 or 4 people in the entire company, not including, I suppose, probably some contractors, like the sculptors and stuff like that. Just dug up a ratty brush to replace it with a hydrangea. No, a ratty bush to replace it with a hydrangea. I'm like, how are you replacing a brush with a flower? There we go. That makes more sense. Is Corvus Belli indie? I don't think so. Honestly, I feel like if you are in distribution, if a store can order you sometimes through a distributor like Alliance or ACD, doesn't not make you indie, but it is an indicator to some degree. They've been around for a long time. They're a decent sized company. I know that they are working with a PR firm currently because the PR firm has reached out to me and they're sending me some of the new Warcrow stuff to take a look at. So I don't know that I would say that they were an indie game particularly. Working on some terrain, but hope to get some Space Station Zero in with my son later today. Nice. Going from Pennsylvania, have you checked out the Consortium yet on Wargame Vault? Miniatures agnostic narrative fantasy game, small but growing community right now. I've not heard of Consortium. That's a good idea. That's something of interest. Indie is supposed to mean creator owned, but folks usually mean smaller companies when they say that. I think it can be both. You know what I mean? Necropolis 28. Yeah, I would say that's probably indie. Bangarang in the Gutterlands. That sounds vaguely familiar, but I don't know what that is. I know I've heard that term before, but I don't remember why. And then OIMCS. That I don't know at all. Is Nova a good con for those that just like to wander and buy cool stuff? If you live nearby then and just want to come by and do that, yes, it's fine. I think if you're going to travel there to just go to the vendor hall, it's not a particularly big vendor hall. I would say last year that Nova was probably between 3 and maybe 4,000 people maximum. I would say that if you're looking to just wander a vendor hall, then probably Adepticon's the better one to go to. But if you live in the DC area and you just want to go check it out, I think it's not a bad idea. As I get older, I find that I enjoy smaller skirmish games, except Star Wars Legion that have unit cards like Blackout or Relic Blade. Normally, I'm not into cards, which is funny since we make games with cards now. But normally, I'm not particularly into cards. The cards that come in, or the cards that are for Blackout, for example. This just showed up in the mail yesterday. This is the UN Raid Force Alpha. These are the new boxes. The older boxes were like the same kind of corrugated cardboard, like white box, but they just had like a big sticker on them, and they were more square. And these are the new ones, which are again that same type of kind of fold up clamshell. See, no, it's not going to focus. It's not autofocus lens. But it looks like they're printing directly onto the thing, which is cool. Anyway, so this is the UN Raid Force, and they come with these cards, which are plastic, like credit cards, basically. And these are how you keep track of what your stats are and all that kind of stuff and blah, blah, blah. So you've got one of those for, there's basically 3 different types of units in the game. This is like a special rules card, which is not plastic. And then in here you have your figures and such for the UN. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 figures. Usually there's like between 8 and 9 in each faction in Blackout. So, now I want to get it back in there and close it, except I keep catching the foam. So, yeah, it's interesting. Like I said, in most games, I'm not super interested in a lot of cards. In these, I mean, it's 3 cards for the entire force. So that's, and there's a slightly bigger card, which I don't know that you need necessarily. That's one of the things I like about Blackout, though, is that there's a lot less stuff that you really need, Again, you have a force that you can use, and then, do I have the book? Somewhere around here I have the book, and the book is tiny. Oh, it's right here. Like, this is the rule book for Blackout. It's spiral bound. It is 44 pages, and it's just this little, I don't know, what is that, 4x6, something like that. And so, yeah, I think they've been doing nice work. I think that they are, frankly, I feel like they're punching above their weight in that they look like probably a bigger kind of company than they are. Because again, I'm pretty sure it's not that many guys there at the company. But they've been putting out, I think, a really nice looking product, and that's good. And it's also an enjoyable game. They were also demoing at TMX as well. So that was pretty cool. GW not giving me old world models for my factions drove me to indie printers and model makers. Your advice on model agnostic finally stuck with me. Well, good. That's good to hear. Once you have hard plastics, you've made it big. I think that's part of what COcast was trying to focus on. COcast is like, look, we want to be able to give people, not exactly hard plastic, but closer and closer to hard plastics without having to go out and spend, because like literally, depending on the molds, 2 good-sized plastic molds, getting those made, will cost about as much as a COcast machine. Because a good-sized plastic mold, like, when you get like one of those bigger molds, not like the normal size that GW does that fits into one of the normal GW boxes, but like the ones that's like twice that size, getting a mold like that made, especially in steel, can cost up to $50,000. And from what I understand, the COcast machines cost about $100,000. So, but on the COcast machines, the molds are rubber, and the molds cost about $300. And you can just, you basically make a mold, crank out a bunch of product, and then you got to make more molds because you eventually wear them out because, again, they're made out of rubber, but they only cost $300, so it's not that big of a deal. Yeah, COcast has got its own issues to some degree. Some people are not fans of COcast because if you want to use COcast, you have to buy the plastic from them. You can't just go, I'm going to buy plastic from whoever I can get plastic from. It's like a proprietary plastic and all that stuff. And I get that. But also you're starting to see 3D printing. I mean, like these models here from these folks, these are 3D printed. These are 3D printed. I'm 98% sure 3D printed by the folks from Death Ray Designs, who also 3D print the models for Steel Rift, the mech game, and all that kind of stuff, which I would say is another indie game. But yeah, actual hard plastics it's expensive. It's like you can do it. There's companies out there, like the people who do, I would still say that this Quar's War is an indie game, even though they do now have hard plastics, but they're getting the hard plastics from Wargames Atlantic, which is I believe, a company from the UK, but they produce everything in the States here actually in the Georgia, down in the southern part of America, and but they don't have like an entire line of plastics. I'm pretty sure they have one mold they paid for, right? And so, because I don't know that you can, like, when you get the box, there's pretty much just the mold that, of the different stuff in there, and you just get that same sprue over and over again. So I don't know if they're going to be making more or not. I suppose it depends on how it sells, but it's a cool game. What's his name? Jay from Eons of Battle just recently talked about it. The title was something like, "Is this game going to overtake 40K?" And I'm like, no, it's not. But he was talking about this Quar's War. Quar is spelled Quar, in case you're looking to go online and take a gander. Indie game I played the most this is Gaslands. Yep. That's interesting too, because Gaslands is published by Osprey, and I would not say that Osprey is a indie company, but they do have this weird thing where they sort of foster indie games. They'll put these blue books out and see if they hit. And Gaslands originally came out as one of those little 64-page blue books, and then it went crazy, and then they were like, "Oh crap, when are we gonna make it?" And then they made Gaslands Refueled, which is the fancier, full color, hardcover version, which barely feels indie to me. I don't know. It's interesting. Morning from Omaha. Working on improving the look of my custodes. Nice. So Moonstone, I guess, would be fairly indie at the moment. I think so. They're pretty small. Good Sunday. Excuse me, from Toronto. Recovering from my first RTT in a while. Who knew pacing around a table for 10 hours would be so tiring? Yeah. Oh no. Playing in a tournament is super tiring. I wouldn't do it anymore myself. I'm too old. Let's see here. We have no gaming stores in the country, so I guess I've always played indie games since the early 80s. Gotcha. Designers' parents are packaging Moonstone minis. I would say that's indie. Yes, exactly. That's definitely indie. Self-promotion, I'd love for you to check out Urban Manhunt, my game inspired by Running Man, The Warriors, and Escape from New York. Interesting. Urban Manhunt. I have not heard of that. Let's see here. Where are we at? Okay. My favorite indie game is Death Wizards. I've hooked a couple of friends who have only played GW games. After Death Wizards campaign, I'm going to try them in Space Station Zero. Well, that's very nice of you. I appreciate that. I hope they enjoy it. Yeah, I would definitely say that Vince and I are indie for sure. Again, because we're pretty much it's the two of us, and then we pay some people to help a little bit here and there, like with obviously development and proofreading and the artists and such that we work with. But yeah. Traders Galaxy is a great indie company. They do a lot of Transformers, G.I. Joe, and Street Fighter inspired minis. Hoping I can scrape some extra money together in time for the depth of kind of hotel block to open. I'm not sure what that is. Got my coffee, paints, and mini, and most importantly, Uncle Adam. Hi from a muggy Gilbert, Arizona. How you doing? I like to paint minis. I thought space was infinite. Some of it is. How do we feel about games published by Osprey with regards to indie? Like, my instinct is no, but also they're mostly... See, yeah, that's what I was just saying, yeah. Like, they're interesting because they are more like a publisher. Like in most tabletop gaming, well, let me back that up. In most video gaming, you have the company that's the developer, and then they find a publisher who then puts it out into the world and does all the marketing and gets it out there and all that kind of stuff. So you're the developer working, and then you're working with some publisher. And in tabletop gaming specifically, that doesn't happen frequently. It does happen from time to time. Osprey is a good example of that. Osprey and Modifius both are companies that within the last several years have put out a call basically saying, "Hey, do you have a game? Let us know. We would like to publish it potentially. Let's talk." You know what I mean? Which most companies are not looking for any outside submissions. Thank you very much. But Osprey and Modifius have in the past. And so Osprey specifically makes those blue books. And if you know what I'm talking about, they're not big. They're 6x9, 7x10, something like that. And they usually have a piece of artwork on the top and then a blue band across the bottom, and they have the title of the game in there. Zona Alpha is a blue book. The original Gaslands is a blue book. Rogue Stars, Dragon Rampant, stuff like that. They've made tons and tons of them, of different blue books, and sometimes they do well, and sometimes they do okay, and then sometimes they go crazy like Gaslands. Like I had a guy from Osprey telling me that they were reprinting 6,000 of those blue books for Gaslands at one point every 3 weeks, 4 weeks. It was just like constant. They couldn't keep it in stock. And then finally they were like, we really need to make a fancy version of this. And then they made the game that you can see these days, which is called Gaslands Refueled, which is a hardcover, full color, the whole deal. So yeah, Osprey is not an indie company, but I think they work with and publish indie games to some degree from some of these smaller companies. So that's kind of this weird spot there, I think. I feel like indie games and independent games are two separate things, but the terms get used interchangeably. You see it a lot in video games as well. I don't know. I mean, I don't know that if an indie game isn't independent, then I don't know that it's an indie game in my opinion. You can have indie sensibilities and then be published by Sony. But again, that's kind of like the Osprey thing. You know what I mean? Like Helldivers 2 is an example I will mention. They are not a big video game company. They're also not a two-person video game company. There was a documentary years ago about a couple different like small indie video game companies who are all launching their product. One of them was that guy who did the game Fez, which he's been problematic, and I don't remember his backstory, but I just know that he's been problematic. But it was also, I think, in that same documentary, there were two guys that made this game called Super Meat Boy or something like that, which I never played. It was one of those games that it looks like it's way harder than I care about. You know what I mean? Like one of those games that like video game like aficionados are like, oh, this is so hard and difficult. And I'm like, yeah, I don't want to play that. I want to have a good time with games versus, but you knock yourself out. But I think it was called Super Meat Boy or something like that. And those were like literally two dudes who were working on it, and we're going to get it put up on the like indie marketplace or whatever on Xbox back in the day. And then the game went crazy and they made a bunch of money and they probably have a bigger company now. In video gaming, like I said, more often than not, if you're a small company, like the company that makes Helldivers is not two people, but it's also not as big as EA or, you know, Ubisoft or any of those companies. But they were kind of small, and they basically kind of made this, and then Sony was like, look, we'll publish it. And so, you know, now you've got big money behind it and all that kind of stuff. And then you have to kind of follow and do what they kind of say, which at that point makes you a little bit less indie. Within tabletop gaming, I feel like you can still be considered indie even if you get published by Osprey. If they put you in one of those little blue books, I don't know. It's hard to say. It's a fine line. Not everything. It's kind of like what they say about back in the day, they used to say about pornography is that I can't define it, but I know it when I see it or something like that. And so indie can be that way as well to some degree. But the concept of like, oh, we're going to make this cool indie game, but you have, you know, 200 developers working on it. I'm like, well, that's not indie at that point. You're trying to find an indie aesthetic maybe to do that, which is fine, I guess, but it's not really an indie game. But I get what you're saying, Automaton. Greetings from Albuquerque. Rain and humidity is most welcome. Well, in Albuquerque generally, yeah, I would suppose so. Only getting the blackout stuff I ordered in metal for my tastes. Gotcha. Memorial Day weekend, and I'm super excited. Nice. Adepticon hotel block. That made, I kind of wondered if there was some, yes, if there was some sort of autocorrect in, yeah. So yeah, Adepticon hotel block, I think goes live Tuesday or Wednesday. Double check on their website or whatever, or on their Facebook or something like that. But I know it's coming up this week. Now, there will be far more hotel rooms for you to choose from this year because of the move to Milwaukee. That's one of the big deals, is that, like, in the past, you wanted to be in the hotel that was also the convention center, because if not, the closest next hotel was a half mile away, which is where I stayed this last year, or this year. And it's a walk, and especially if it's raining or snowing. It was snowing one day. That was no fun. Also, geese are mean, and sometimes they're like, you can't walk over here, buddy, and they will bully you, which is mean. Anyway, but every other place is not particularly much of a walking distance. You're talking about driving generally. Whereas at the new place in Milwaukee, instead of just having those 450 rooms that are in the main building and everything else is a good deal away, there's nothing in the actual convention center because it's a convention center, not a convention center and hotel. But there are 3 or 4 attached hotels via Skywalk. And then basically, if you go within about 3 blocks of that place, there's something like 1,300 hotel rooms. So there's considerably more than 450. And then if you go even just a little bit further, there's even more. But it depends on whether you want to be Skywalk attached or not. We are talking about late March in Wisconsin, which, sometimes can be a little weird, but whatever. It should be just a little bit better, I think, for rooms. But still, housing is coming up this week. Our local FLGS has gone big into dystopian wars. Nice to see something new. However, after reading the rules, does not seem to be for me. I mean, that happens. Sometimes you'd be like, "This is just," and that's kind of what I talked about today. Friday, in the video, was about how rules are important, and you can love the concept of a game, but if the rules don't work for you, you could always take the concept and go in a different direction with different rules that you do like better. But sometimes it's also just a situation of like if you're not just absolutely hopelessly in love with the the fluff, whatever you want to call it, the vibes, like some people are, specifically with Games Workshop stuff, 40K example. If you're not just like absolutely crazy about it, then maybe it's not the game for you. If you also hate the rules, if you like, well, I love the story and the rules are awesome and I think they're great. Some people might say that. But yeah, I don't know. Let's see here. How far have I let's see here. Albuquerque, there we go. My FLGS owner reached out for Rain and Hell printed to sell in stores. Who is right to talk to for those? There is a at the bottom of the website, there is a link, the snarlingbadger.com website. At the bottom of every page is a link that says retailer portal, and they can fill out a form, and then I get an email in theory, and then I can reach out to them and go from there. 9 out of 10 are excellent indeed. I see Osprey Games is indie because they don't have a miniatures company for their game. I don't know if yeah, to some degree, in this day and age, just making a rule set almost kind of automatically makes you indie. Little bit, maybe. I don't know. Hard to say. Printed up all the Matt Knucklebones Necromancers for Death Wizards. Nice. Read through the rules last night. My gaming group has taken a break from more time to play. Looking forward to it. Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, no, there was... Knucklebones did great work. Maddie really did some amazing work on those models, and I was real happy about it. See, now the sun's starting to come up a little bit, and I can't set the auto ISO in video mode. I have to look into that. All right. Off to grab cold drink. I'm parched. Nice. OPR indie, or is it past that point? It's still, I would say, indie. I mean, they're being very smart and they're making decent money, but they're still like I said, there's only, I think as far as actual people who work there, there's maybe 3, maybe there's 4, but at Adepticon, I'm pretty sure I met all of them because it was Gaetano, who's the guy who started it all and designer and all that kind of stuff. And then there's Jefferson, who's their community guy. And then there's the third guy whose name I can never remember. It's either Pierre or it might have been Paul or something like that. I forget. He was, I believe, French. Very, very nice guy. And that's pretty much it. Like they, contract, from what I understand, to, for artists and for sculptors, obviously, that they do every month for their Patreon and all that kind of stuff. I would say that, they might be heading out of indie eventually, but they're still kind of indie right now. The Welsh do love a good randomly placed Y. It's true. It's true. Currently painting Spectre Operations by Spectre Miniatures. It's a modern war game, and it's an indie game I'm really liking. I think I've heard of it. Is Spearhead actually accessible? I just watched a GMG video, and it seems like it's like a horrible on-ramp, despite what Ash is saying. I think that it is probably a little bit, in my opinion, it's potentially a little bit more accessible than Combat Patrol. So the upside to Combat Patrol, in comparison to just going, I'm going to start playing 40K, If you're like, I'm going to start playing 40K by playing Combat Patrol, that makes more sense to me. You spend $160, you get a box of models. They tell you how to build them. You don't have to worry about, should I use a plasma gun? Should I not? What's the points? You just build them following what they say. Then you download the rules, and then you can play, and you don't have to worry about like, well, but what if I tweak this? Well, what if I tweak that? No, you just learn how to play using the stuff that they tell you that's in the box. And then that will give you something hopefully to head you in the right direction. And then maybe you take that box and you start adding to it, and then blah, 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 whatever. Spearhead is the same way. Again, you just buy a box and then you build it, and then you start going from there. So I find that, and again, the rules and everything will be accessible, will be digitally accessible in that they'll be downloadable. And the, War Scrolls or whatever, just like it's basically the same thing. It's just for one deal, it is in theory it should be more balanced than Combat Patrol. Part of the problem with Combat Patrol is that the Combat Patrol boxes came out and were in stores before they decided to make the Combat Patrol format, if that makes any sense. Like, they had these boxes out there for like, hey, this is a Combat Patrol. They used to call them start collecting boxes, and they, for whatever reason, changed them to Combat Patrol before they were eventually like, we should make those starter boxes for 40K. And then they were like, yeah, but some of these boxes are way overpowered in comparison. Like, the Imperial Guard box versus the Custodes box. Like, if you sat down and counted up the points, there was a huge discrepancy. And I don't mean like, oh, there are 50 points different. I mean, like, when 10th edition initially dropped, it was around 365 points if you built the entire Combat Patrol box for the Guard. And if you built the entire Combat Patrol box for the Custodes, it was like 900 points or something like that. So yeah, that's why they had to kind of change it and say, oh, well, you can either use this or that in this box, but you can't run them both. And they also had to make other changes and things like that. All that to say, the Spearhead boxes were designed knowing in advance several years ago that this was what they were going to do with them. So they should be more evenly balanced. And the fact that you're also playing on a smaller board should be also a bit more accessible for people, because you probably already have a Warcry board, or if you don't, one comes if you buy the the main box or the Skaventide box, and you get the terrain and the whole deal. So I don't know. I feel like it's probably going to be pretty accessible for people who want to get into it. I don't know. I guess what do you think is not accessible about it? That would be my question. Been building model planes as a change pace. Nice. Great call on the test figure build. It's pronounced Koftaran. Koftaran. No kidding. Oh, wow. That is not what I would have thought by looking at that word. Let's see here. Love Skaven. Not sure about the latest product. I like the models so far. Like the actual what do you call them? The clan rats. The clan rats that are in that box. Most of them are 2 pieces. Every once in a while you get one that's 3, but I think 90% of them, if not more of them, and I've built 20 of them at this point, were all 2 pieces, and they went together pretty easily. I mean, some of them have a little bit of a gap here and there in a spot, and you'd be like, I could sit there and try to cover that up, but I kind of don't care at this point. I just want to get them done. And again, there's so many of them, it kind of doesn't matter. But yeah, I've got, like I said, I've got those guys done. I've got the Grey Seer built, but he's not primed yet. I still have to do I've got one of the Rat Ogres built, but not textured or primed. I need to build 2 more of those. I still need to build another. I have to build the Engineer, and I have to build the big boss guy who's riding a rat horse. I don't know what the heck that thing's supposed to be. It's weird. Anyway, yeah, it's a lot, unfortunately. That's the one downside. I do wish that they would have made Combat Patrol and... I wish they would have made Combat Patrol and Spearhead fewer models, but that just doesn't align with their ideas. So, what are you going to do? At this point, I really only see the Skaven one and the Cities of Sigmar one are the only 2 Spearheads I see myself bothering with. Yeah, I'm not going to go as heavy into Spearhead as I did Combat Patrol, and honestly, at this point, I wish I hadn't gone as deep into Combat Patrol. Attempting to base the figures I made from the free Warlord Games Modern Military Sprue on Saturday. Nice. I'm glad the Skaven players have a new Clan Rat standard troop model, but to be honest, I'm finding the new minis a little uninspired. I don't know. I thought they were fine, but they're not, you know, they're not different, I guess. They're not crazy different. They're not a change, which I'm fine with. What's your method for cleaning and building miniatures fast? I'm working on building a Death Guard army, and it's taking a while to get everything clean and built. I don't have a good answer for that, to be perfectly honest with you. Mold lines are something that slows me down because I definitely want to make sure that I get rid of them as well as I can. Nothing is more disheartening than starting to paint a model that you've primed and then you find a mold line you missed. You know what I mean? Like, I just hate that. So the mold lines in this are not, they're there, but they're not terrible. I mean, I'd hope not. It should be a relatively brand new mold. So, you know, it shouldn't have terrible mold lines yet, I'd hope. Usually as the molds are pressing more and more over time, over years, you have a tendency to get more of a mold line because things just start to wear out a little bit. As those plastic, you know, as the mold comes together, they inject them, and then it opens up and the plastic usually pops out or whatever, that kind of stuff. Just over time, where the molds meet, those, instead of it coming perfectly flat together, you start to get a little bit of a, like that, and then that's where the mold lines, you know, and again, we're talking about on a small scale. But yeah, that's where mold lines have a tendency to come from. Older molds will have more mold lines usually. So, at least from what I've seen. If you can afford an IP, you're not an indie. Yeah, no, that's very probably the case too. Exactly. Greetings from Sterling Heights, Michigan. Listening as I trim a tree. Nice. If Chaosium is indie, Wizards is the only non-indie RPG company. I mean, well, yes. You'd be, yeah, no, yeah. I don't think Chaosium's indie. I don't think that Pathfinder, Paizo, I don't think Paizo is indie, you know, for sure. Let's see here. Having a ton of cool wizards from Reaper is giving me great options for Death Wizards. This is my favorite game from you guys. Well, cool. I'm glad to hear it. Thank you very well. Thank you very much. OPR is kind of like the reinvention of cottage industry when it comes to models. Yeah, they're definitely doing something different than everybody else, and I like that. Is Indiana Jones indie? No, he's INDY. That's how you pronounce it. That's how you spell his name when you're, you know, saying it shorter. Like indie with an IE at the end is independent. Indie with a Y at the end is Indiana, or usually Indianapolis. They should have named Indianapolis Jones. Afternoon from Scotland. Fluffy clouds, breezy, nice. Have you had any time to actually play games recently, like Steel Rift with that new crew you painted? I have not had a chance to play Steel Rift yet, but I'm going to be doing it soon. I do want to get my terrain finished for it, though. I have it primed, and I just need to kind of go through and put some colors on some stuff. But otherwise, yeah, I have not had a chance to play anything like this last week. I've only had those guys done for maybe about a week, I think. I think when I put the what do you call them, the water slide decals, and then did a matte varnish like the next day. I think that was seriously, maybe it might have been last weekend, or was it the week before? I don't know. It's a blur. Loved Friday's video. Love that slogan. Well, nice. Good to hear. Bangarang is Bill making stuff. Oh. Maybe that's where, because isn't that also a thing from, is there a song called Bangarang? Or is that something the guy from Hook says? I don't know. But I think I knew a little, that now that makes more sense. That Bill guy seems nice. I got to meet him at Adepticon this year. We chatted a couple of times. We kept bumping into each other. I wonder if indie is the same as boutique, which Rob from Jugs the podcast refers to. Boutique. I don't know. Why do they call the podcast Jugs? Does anyone know? I don't know. It's an odd choice. I'm assuming there's a background. I just don't know what it is. When I first saw that, I'm like, am I reading that right? But I think I am. Made my own indie game called The Dirty Half Dozen. I'm just trying to dip my toe in the water, so I'm offering it for free. I hope to make it a lot more, but I'm having trouble finding an audience. Yeah, The hard part, and people ask me frequently, they're like, "Hey, I want to get into game design. What's the first thing I should do? What should I, what am I?" And I always tell people that the first thing you want to do before you even start designing a game is build an audience. Um, you could start a YouTube channel. It's a lot of work, but you could also start a blog. You could start Instagram. It's something, any kind of thing like that. Um, I want to bring blogs back. I don't know. You could do what's the other one? It starts with an S. Who do I follow? Substack. Substack. You could use Substack maybe. I don't know. It's or Medium. I don't know if that Medium is a thing anymore. But there's ways you can get out there to an audience, and it takes a while. It's not a fast process. But when you start talking about, let's say in this example, war game design or war games in general or whatever, as you sort of build that audience who likes what you're saying, that then when you decide, hey, I've got this game now, take a look at it. The people who like what you're saying also might like what you make. That was not the plan, obviously, for Vince and I. When like a decade or more, so both of us started our YouTube channels. We weren't like, we're going to do this, and then eventually we'll produce a game, and then people will buy it because they follow us on YouTube. That was not the nefarious plan from the beginning. Though some people initially, when we launched Rain in Hell, some people were like, "Well, you guys are cheating because people know you from YouTube," and we're like, "Yes, that was our fiendish plan to spend nearly a decade building a YouTube channel." How you doing? That was Margot. You can't see her, but if she lays down over here, you might be able to. Anyway, yeah, but I would say build an audience. Finding an audience is difficult. Like that's why people do Kickstarters and spend a lot of money on marketing. And so if you don't want to do that, which I don't suggest, then do it organically and build an audience. But it's not a fast process. Saw a bunch at Origins. Good morning from Columbus. Hey, how you doing? Yeah, I gotta be honest. I got a little bit of FOMO about not going to Origins this year. I haven't been to Origins since 2019, and then I was like, yeah, I don't see myself going this year, and I was kind of like looking forward to June and July not going anywhere. But then there are some of the folks from Army Painter there, and I was like, yeah. And I've got some friends that are there. I've been chatting with a little bit back and forth. My friend Jason's there, and I was like, I kind of wish I'd gone. So maybe next year. We'll see. Morning from San Diego. Got sorry, I thought it said resin. Got Rain in Hell and Space Station Zero. Curious how you deal with the inundation of rules games, selecting one and getting it to the table versus just trying to keep up with new. You mean within Snarling Badger Studios, or do you just mean within like my own personal shenanigans? I guess I just like to dip my toe a lot. I'm not a person who's like, okay, I'm going to focus on this one system because I'm going to get really super good at it and I'm going to win tournaments or whatever. I'm like, no, I want to play them a little bit of this, a little bit of that. The benefit to that type of lifestyle, for lack of a better term, is that if you play miniatures agnostic games, that mech that you use for Steel Rift can also be used in Flames of Orion, or that dude that you used in I mean, honestly, I could use these blackout UN forces as I could take 5 of them and use them as my team in Space Station Zero, or whatever. It's really nice to just be able to take models and swap them around. Now, part of the reason that I have a tendency in most situations to keep my basing the same when I'm playing sci-fi games, all my sci-fi models have basically the same base kind of design, and all my fantasy models have basically the same base design, is so that when I do want to start swapping them around, they don't have mismatching bases, which is not important, but it's slightly important to me, and that's why I do it. Now, my Steel Rift guys are on desert bases. Most of my models aren't on desert bases, but those guys I don't see like taking a Steel Rift model and putting him next to like an Adeptus Mechanicus guy and making up a thing, though I could, I suppose. But yeah. Let's see here. Part of me is against miniature agnostic, but I sculpt miniatures and want to make my own game using said miniatures. Interesting. I mean, not everybody has to be into it, obviously, but I don't know. I think that like I'm not as interested these days in miniatures games that have a requirement of a certain type of model. Like every once in a while I get it, I guess. I mean like the Quar thing, like the this Quar's War is basically Robot Squirrel the game. And what I mean by that, if you've been paying it, if you've been listening to me for a little while, I talk about how sometimes when you make a game and it's going to be miniatures agnostic, if the game is about robot squirrels, you've painted yourself into a corner because there's not a lot of robot squirrel models out there in the world for people to just go to their local store and go, oh, I could grab a couple of these robot squirrels off of the shelf and then use them in the robot squirrel game that Uncle Adam and Vince made. That's why you make games that are generally like, oh, yeah, I could use Space Marines in this, or I could use wizards in this, or I could use zombies in this, or I could use whatever, and that's the thing. So when you make a game like the Quar game, like this Quar's War, you wouldn't use Space Marines in that game. You know what I mean? Like, you could, certainly. You could use anything. Again, if you believe in yourself, you can use coins. That's fine. But they're a very specific, like, throughout the artwork, it's all very specific. You could play Blackout with Space Marines if you wanted to. You know what I mean? There's no reason that you couldn't, because they're sci-fi and they're guys fighting with guns. Those are pretty across the board. But, like, these weird guys are, So when you make a game that's being very specific, then yeah, you better make the models, I guess. But I'm just more interested these days, for the most part, in games that don't require models. If they have cool models, and there are not too many of them, like, again, Blackout, for example, you're looking at 8 or 9 models. That's fine. Yeah, I don't know. It's, again, a weird sort of gray sort of line that you're on the tipping point of there. But if you want to make your own models sculpted and then make your own game for it, there's nothing against doing that, because Lord knows there are people out there who like being told these are the models for this game, so they can go, okay, now I know what to get. Because there's also a lot of people out there who, when they look at more miniature agnostic rule sets, I don't want to say frightens them, but it confuses and befuddles them, where they're like, I don't know what models to use for this. And I'm like, it's a game about zombies and skeletons and stuff. Just use zombies and skeletons. And they're like, but which ones? And you're like, okay. So, yeah, there you go. I think Jugs, the podcast, was referring to Snarling Badger's work as boutique as well. So maybe indie is perspective. Or it could just be like we call it a trunk and they call it a boot. You know what I mean? I don't know. It could just be like a different term, or else maybe they don't think of us as indie, which is weird because we're pretty independent. I don't know. But yeah, I hadn't heard about that. I should probably listen to the podcast. Box reminds me of the old G.I. Joe, 80s G.I. Joe vehicle boxes. Miss those? Nice. Bangarang is about dueling robots made of junk by Apocrypha Now and bill making stuff. Well, there you go. That makes sense. Hello from a suspiciously sunny Newcastle, Northeast England. Been sorting stuff for this cool indie game about necromancers. Nice. Is OPR still indie? I think they're on the cusp of going beyond. I think that they're still kind of indie, yeah. Because again, can't get them in stores. Can only get it online. And also it's a very, very small team. So Objective Interim Modern Combat System. Got it on Drive-Thru RPG Charity Bundle once. Huh. Number one, I did not know that they had charity bundles. That's interesting. And two, never heard of it. Does anyone play Quar here? I like the minis, but I don't know if the game is for me. I haven't played it yet, but I watched a battle report that was on Tabletop, and it was very illuminating. I like the system. It's interesting. Like, you have these cards. So there's cards that come in it, but they're not like faction cards, and you don't have to use their cards. You could use whatever. But when you decide it's your turn, okay, it's my turn, and now I'm going to activate. Basically, your opponent takes a card off of the deck, and then they look at it, and they don't show it to you. And it either has like a tree with like 3 leaves, I think 4 leaves or 5 leaves. So you know that you get to activate at least 3 guys, but you don't know whether you get to activate a 4th or a 5th. And they don't have to tell you, the opponent, until you've activated 3. So you're going to activate at least 3, but maybe you get to activate 4, maybe you get to activate 5. You don't know, but your opponent does. Not that they can do really anything about it. They're just there basically to act as the blind, kind of to let you know. So when you so it's kind of a push your luck sort of situation to some degree. When you activate, you go, okay, this guy's going to move over here, and he's going to shoot that guy. Okay, this guy's going to do this, and this guy's going to do that. And then you ask your opponent, can I activate another one? And then they would be like, no. And they would show you that you got the 3 card. Okay, cool. Or they would say yes. And then you'd know that you have at least the 4 card, but you don't know if maybe they have the 5 card. So you don't know. So it's kind of like that thing in bolt action where you reach into the dice bag to pull out what's going to activate next, and it's giving you that sort of fog of war. The reason for this activation is not just to be weird or whatever, or to sell cards, even though the cards come in the box. It's to show you that kind of fog of war. Things are happening in this battle and you have to react to them, and you don't know what's going to happen, right? You know you're going to be able to activate at least 3, but maybe as many as 5 in your turn before you're done, but you don't know. But it is a known quantity. You know it's not going to be 6, and you also know it's not going to be 2. So it's giving you this kind of extra little level to it, which I think is very interesting. But otherwise, the majority of the rest of it is relatively standard, like, oh, you shoot at this guy and you roll to see if you hit and that kind of stuff and whatever. But I thought the activation scheme was very interesting in that. But definitely watch the battle report over at on Tabletop, aka the old Beast of War, guys. Thanks again for your tip about adding speed paint medium to use speed paints on surfaces with less texture. It worked great. Yeah, it does work really nicely. Like, I don't want to make it so that people think that you have to use this brand's medium on this brand's paint, but it does work a little bit better because the medium on any particular brand of paint or style of paint, if you buy speed paint medium or wash medium or that kind of stuff, it is literally just the same stuff usually, but without pigment in it. So you're adding fluid to it without having to. When you add water to certain things to water them down, they have a tendency to start to maybe sometimes make the pigment clump together a little bit because the water and the actual medium, the stuff that's the clear stuff in the paint, don't mix particularly. So then it forces the clumps to sort of happen. There's more science to it than that from what I understand. I don't really know all the science, but I do know that these days, like if I just want to water down a paint a little bit to kind of make it a little bit thinner, I'll probably just use a dash of water and it should be fine. But if I want to make a glaze from, let's say, like a Fanatic paint, which is like opaque, or if I want to make a glaze from a speed paint or even a wash, something really like a super thin wash, generally these days I'm going to use the medium, and there are different mediums for different things. And you can get away with using Lamian medium in, Fanatic paints if you want to. I just don't know that it'll work as well as if you actually use the actual stabilizer that's made for that. There are, I'm sure, people that will tell me that I'm wrong, and that's fine. But that's what I'm sticking with because I know that the chemical composition of this medium is the same as the chemical composition of the medium that's in this product, and so that's why I have a tendency to use them when I do that. As a 34-year vet of wargaming, OPR's option to build your own army book has breathed a lot of life into my hobby. I find cool models and build a balanced rulebook around it. Yeah, we were just talking about that yesterday a little bit. Maybe it was on Friday on Twitch. I don't know. I was just talking about it recently about how if you're a Patreon subscriber for OPR, you get access to the army building thing. So okay. So you can make your own list. Anybody can do that. You can go onto their website, find the thing, and make your own list based off of the stuff that they already have. Oh, I'm going to use, Brood Brothers. I'm going to use Human Defense Force. I'm going to use, whatever. But if you want to actually make your own stats to make up your own army, then I think you have to be a Patreon at the $5 a month thing to get access to that. But you're right. It can allow you to completely build whatever you want. And the points all match up because they've got like the equations all built into it. We were talking about this yesterday in the Patreon thing. It's because like GW is just kind of like they make a model and they're like, I don't know, that guy's like 28 points, let's say, let's try that. And then, in 3 months they're like, let's make him 35. And then they're like, well, let's make him 32. And they just go back and forth. And one page rules kind of goes underneath the hood and shows you, look, the reason that this guy in this force is 35 points is because of this equation over here. And you could build a guy using exactly the same stats and he would come across and be the same amount of points because we're using the same across the board. And it just makes a lot of sense. So, yeah, it's a neat feature as well. Goobertown / Paint Bravely introducing me to Wasteman, and I'm ready to buy some indie models for the first time. Love the fun in the sculpts. I'm vaguely familiar with Wasteman, and they are crazy, crazy sculpts. Coming from Arizona, getting ready for a day out with a family. Nice. I tried Blackout with proxy minis and printed free rules and fell in love with the game. It's very fast and tactical. Like, it's the thing that I like about it is it's not one of those games where you're like, okay, you hit me. I took 2 wounds. I've got 5 wounds left. It's like, oh, you hit me. I'm dead. Like, it's not. There's no. It's you really have to be careful, and the games go very quickly because of that. Good morning from Altadena, California. How you doing? My guide for a company being indie is to look at the size of their booth at Gen Con. When you go from a single booth space to a multi-space, especially too wide, you are no longer indie. Well, at Gen Con, probably yes, because Gen Con's crazy expensive these days. Or maybe you've got a rich family. Yeah, I guess that's possible too. I don't know. Or maybe you won the lottery. But in general, yeah, I get that. Like smaller conventions, like even like Adepticon, well, 2 booths is not cheap, but it's not as expensive as Gen Con. Yeah. Like Gen Con's cheapest booth these days, I think, is in the entrepreneurial section, and you get a 10 by 10. And I think it is, last I looked, it was $1,800 or maybe $2,000. Back in the day, when me and my friend Peter, back when it was Snarling Badger Games, before being Snarling Badger Studios, and I'm talking like in the 90s, we got an entrepreneurial booth from Gen Con when it was still in Milwaukee, and back then it cost $150. So, anywho, tardy to the party. How you doing, DJ Todd P. Harris? Glad to be here from soggy Columbus, Ohio. I love indie games. Very refreshing from the standard commercial gamer fare. Yeah, I think it's a lot of fun to. I think that the problem sometimes is that people are like, yeah, but the big issue that I hear all the time is like, yeah, but nobody else plays that game, and I'm like, well, A, some of these games are solo, so you can just play by yourself, and then maybe eventually get somebody else involved, or B, well, maybe you have to show some people how to play, and that's why I think the skirmish ones make a lot more sense, because it's way easier for you as a person to build 2 small skirmish forces so that you can play with other people and try to get them involved than it is to build 2 big honking armies and then play with other people so you can get them involved. That's the big deal. Idols of Torment by Jeremy from Black Magic Craft. I've not played it. I'm familiar kind of with it. I remember watching a video about it. But I've not gotten a chance to play. I didn't back the Kickstarter. I don't do a lot of Kickstarters these days if I can help it. Is this game going to overtake 40K as a great example of a clickbait title? Yeah, I suppose. That's the thing. More Quar plastics are coming August or September, and then in November. Nice. I was wondering if they're going to make a 3D print of like the Quar tanks. They should maybe do something like that. Although I don't know if I necessarily want to have tanks in the game now that I can think of it. I don't know. It seems like it would make the game bigger than it needs to be. Relic Blade is my go-to indie game. I play it weekly at the FLGS for more than a year. Nice. Osprey's been around for decades, specializing in military, soldier, and material books. True, yeah. Before they got into actual games, they had like made supplements, or not supplements, but like things for games. So you were like, oh, I'm interested in finding out whether my Napoleonic guys should have brown pants or blue pants and stuff like that. So they made a lot of books like that. But it wasn't until 10 years ago, maybe less, that they started actually getting into games and made an imprint called Osprey Games. So yeah. I think my favorite indie is Turnip 28. Turnip 28 is very cool. I'm very much looking forward to Swill, which is the kind of adjacent game that he's working on. I'm very much looking forward to that. Good morning from another rainy Sunday in New Hampshire. It's been rainy. It's crazy here. Some Flesh Eater Quartz. Nice. Hope you're doing well, Adam, and thank you for the copy of Death Wizards. Oh, good, Alex. I'm glad that you got it. I was hoping that you would get it soon. I hope you enjoy taking a look at it. Any thoughts on Fights of Fantasy from the Tactical Tabletop? I have heard of neither of those things. So, no? But that's interesting. Fights of Fantasy from the Tactical Tabletop. I haven't heard that, yeah. Osprey is owned by Bloomsbury. Not exactly, that's the thing. Osprey is owned by a much larger company too, which again, not indie. Let's see here. Hello from Argentina. How you doing? Currently painting D&D minis for my whole party and preparing to play Trench Crusade with a friend. Nice. Trench Crusade is definitely an indie game because it is being made. Well, I mean, it's made by a very small group, but the trick is that they're very. How am I trying to say this? They're very talented folks. So again, I feel like they're going to probably punch above their weight class. So you have the guy who made the rules for well, one of the main guys who made the rules for Mordheim. He's not the only guy, but he's, yeah. So you've got that guy, Thomas. I'm not pronouncing it properly. There's a U in there, sort of, and I'm not. Sorry. Anyway, him, and then there's another guy whose name I think is Jeff, but I could be wrong. I feel like this is dark again. Stupid clouds. Anyway, that guy is the artist, and he has worked for big video game companies like Blizzard and stuff like that. And he's astoundingly good. So you've got very good rules writer, very good artist, and then there's another guy who I think is the sculptor, and I can't remember his name, and he's also very good too. So you've got these three folks who are very good and have worked in big non-indie situations, and they've decided to come together and do their own thing. And that's like the perfect kind of crazy indie sort of situation that's going to definitely get eyeballs on the indie crowd to some degree, hopefully, and that's very cool. So I'm very much looking forward to it. I've looked at the rules. They've got a free like beta PDF right now for the rules, and the rules I think seem very. I like the concepts a lot. I like the structure to the rules. I like what they're doing there. My biggest problem with the game at this point, and it's a me problem, not a them problem, is that I've been seeing people who've been kit bashing stuff, and because there's not any models to get yet. They're going to have evidently a Kickstarter later part of the year, which, whatever. Because they've made such specific pieces of amazing artwork for each type of model in the game, if my model doesn't look like that, I'm going to be like, it's not quite, you know what I mean? And that's again a me problem. Like if they had just been like, like in our game in Death Wizards, we did not go through and draw you, this is what a zombie has to look like, and this is what that has to look like, and this is what, you know what I mean? We gave you, oh, here's a giant skeleton, attacking the villagers, and over here's this, and over here's that, and whatever. But we're not going specifically saying this is what this needs to look like. And because of that, I have no problem as a hobbyist making whatever I want to make and doing, however I want to set that up, which is fun. But when they make something that's very specific, I still could go and sculpt something myself, or kit bash, not sculpt really, but kit bash something myself. But I kind of want it to look like that because that artwork's really awesome. And so that's why I end up kind of, waiting and seeing how they're going to work and make the miniatures come out and everything like that. So one particular system I came across is called Haywire and Haywire Outbreak. Great indie solo and cooperative game. Saw the rule breakdown and campaign on YouTube. I don't think I've heard of that. Interesting. Looking forward to second edition of This Is Not a Test. Game with a fantastic writer and community. I know Joe McGuire. I'm 98% sure we're friends on Facebook. But yeah, This Is Not a Test is a cool game. I did not know a second edition was coming. That's very cool. Oh, they're going to be going through Blacksite Studios. Interesting. Cool. Speaking of Osprey, I really need to have that game of Engard I was planning to play with proxies. Gotcha. Have you looked into the Doomed? It looks like Grimdark Kitbasher's Dream. Yeah, I bought a copy. I haven't got a chance to play yet to try it out. I will be honest, the fact that there's no movement stat, you just kind of move where you want, is weird to me, and I haven't been able to wrap my brain around it. I also haven't had the time to actually sit down and try to wrap my brain around it even more. But after reading the rules and stuff, I was like, how's that supposed to work? And I should probably just sit down and watch a battle report. I know Ash has done one, so I should probably watch that too. I personally love Modifius. Other than common shipping delays, they're pretty great as a company. Yeah, they seem to be good people. They're doing, they do Elder Scrolls. They're doing Fallout, obviously. I'm interested in Fallout Factions. I want to take a look at that when it comes out, which I think is in July. Blue Book's line from Osprey is great. Fighting Sails, On Guard, and Outrunner. Yes, but there's a bunch of the great ones in there too. My favorite thing about miniatures agnostic indie games is pitting decades-old miniatures lines against each other. Critter Commandos versus Warzone Bauhaus. Nice. Void versus Vor. Nice. My board games friends play Gaslands and they don't play any other miniatures games. I would say that that's a super gateway game. I think you can rope nearly anybody into Gaslands. Osprey is akin to Take-Two's private division subsidiary, which publishes games from smaller indie developers, The Outer Worlds and Hades. Sure, I can see that. Hades, yeah, I guess that's indie. I watched a little bit of a documentary about them, and they seem to be a relatively small group. Shout out for Burrows and Badgers from Oathsworn Miniatures here in the UK. It's just Michael and his wife Jo, but it's so enchanting. Well, that's cool. Yeah, I would definitely say that's indie. Plan to pick up a couple more of those Osprey Blue Book games. They're indie enough for me, and I can buy them retail, which is the only way I buy things. Gotcha. What I meant was, technically speaking, Valve games are indie games, but I definitely wouldn't consider Valve indie. They are independent, though. Independent of what? That's always the question. You know what I mean? Like when you talk about like, well, they're independent. That's the thing about the word indie in that situation is it means you're independent, but the question is, what are you independent of? Yeah, it is an interesting word that we use there. You know what I mean? Technically, if the work is work for hire and not creator owned, then it's not independent. But people are usually thinking of an aesthetic when they say indie. I mean, if you're working for a bigger company, yes. But if like Vince and I do the work ourselves, that makes us indie. But we do also pay some folks to do, like, let's say, artwork and other stuff, and they're doing work for hire. So does the fact that we pay them to do artwork not make us indie in that situation, or is that, I don't, that's a good question. Cool. My airbrush cleaning pots came with extra filters. They put them in the pot. Nice. Victrix kits are impressive and very good value. I don't know that I've ever actually come across any around here. Best wishes to New Mexico firefighters. Yeah, I hope that things go well. Just pre-ordered 5 Parsecs Tactics from Modiphius. It's an expanded scenario-driven rule set for larger battles in the 5P universe. Nordic Weasel is very indie, but picked up by a publisher. Yeah. That's the question, is whether that makes them still indie or not when they picked up by a bigger publisher. That's a good question. I still would say yes to some degree because, yeah, like, again, like I said, is Helldivers 2 indie? You know what I mean? Like, they're a smaller indie company, but they got picked up and probably bankrolled, I'm sure, to some degree by Sony. And so when you're, if you compare 5 Parsecs from Home, the original version, that Ivan, I think his name's Ivan, from Nordic Weasel did, in comparison to, I think, 3rd edition, which is the one that Modiphius put out, there's a definite visual difference for sure. You know what I mean? So yeah, that is a question. I'm not sure about the answer to that. Every time I listen, I buy something. Just place to buy for Relic Blade. Nice. Relic Blade's an amazing game. And you want to talk about indie? Like, that's Sean Sutter's doing almost all of it. It seems like he, back in the day, he was not only designing the game, laying out the game, doing the illustrations, he was also doing the sculpting, and I think he was pouring the metal. Honestly, I don't know that he does that anymore. I think maybe he sends off the stuff to get cast, but he was casting his own models for a while. Everything's scrolled. Come on, where are we? Where's the art and thumbnail from? It is from a game called Blackout, BLKOUT. So if you just do a search for BLKOUT, like Blackout Game, I think is technically the URL.com. Whoa, Black Betty, Bangarang. See, there you go. Wow, I was way behind. Victrix. Okay. There we go. Anyone use a Sray Gunner battery-operated compressor airbrush? I saw it the other day on a hobby channel and seemed practical for figures and smaller. I haven't used one of those. Not that particular name. There's no observable difference from the purchaser's perspective between an indie game and a multi-million-dollar corporation when no one you know plays the game. There's no observable difference from the purchaser's perspective between the indie game and a multi-million-dollar corporation when no one you know plays the game. I don't know that that's true at all. I mean, the quality of it, the materials, like you can. There's a lot, honestly, that's different between an indie game and that game. And again, if there's nobody that plays that you know that plays the game and you're interested in the game, then it comes to you to decide to start trying to teach people to play the game. That's just the way it works. If we're all only going to play the game that everybody always plays, then we should all just quit, in my opinion. Like, it doesn't make any sense to just have one game. I know there's a lot of people out there who just love that concept, but it's a terrible concept because then that one company gets to drive the boat and do whatever they want and raise prices, and you then leave the hobby if you don't like that game. So that's what happens to people. So having a lot of different games out there makes a lot of sense. And sometimes you have to teach people, but sometimes you also don't have to just play with huge groups of people. There are far more people out there who play amongst their group of 4 or 3 than there are people out there who go to big, huge honking tournaments and stuff like that. So, yeah. First live, and I am late. Well, that's okay. Do you know Freebooter's Fate, pirate-themed skirmish indie game with amazing miniatures? I've heard the name, but I don't know anything about the game. At UKGE, we found so many clever games that were really simple with regards to the rules. Good to see so much variety. Yeah. Morning from sunny Victoria. What was that game about space salvage? Seems like it would pair well with Blackout. Space salvage. A miniatures game? I can't think of anything. Thoughts on Steamforge buying War Machine? Do you think they can bring it back? I think they can give it a good try. I don't know if the ship has sailed on that situation. I don't know. That's a good question. The fact that there's going to be hard plastic miniatures is good, but I don't know. That's a good question. Have you heard of Innocence? The concept, yes. If it's a game, no. All my minis are painted. All my terrain is painted. Going to use all my old spray paint to graffiti. Legal walls exist. Okay, cool. Just picked up 4th Army of Infinity Code 1. Is that an indie game? I don't know if Corvus Belli is considered indie. Again, they're in distribution. You can buy them like in stores sometimes. Not every store obviously carries Infinity, but it can be carried in stores. That's a big thing. They've been around for a good long time. They have a decent sized company from what I understand. They're maybe a little bit on the bubble, but I don't know. A game about space salvage called Void Cowboys. Ash Barker at Guerrilla Miniature Games did a review, and it sounds entertaining as a filler type game. Huh, not heard of it. Interesting. I think Spearhead is accessible for a GW game in relation to the rest. Not so much. Yeah, I get that. Cheers from Brazil. How you doing? Thank you. Lick that like button. I don't know the licking it's going to help. Osprey games are miniature agnostic, which next to the GW model of making rules to sell miniatures can look indie if you squint hard enough. Sure. I mean, yes. Although technically, they are technically miniature agnostic, but... Hey, Margo. But you, I mean, like, Osprey or Frostgrave and Stargrave are both Osprey games and technically do have lines of miniatures attached to them. You don't have to use them, obviously, but really you don't have to use anybody's line of miniatures if you don't want to. But yeah. Scale of 1 to 10, what are the chances of you and Vince making an Eldritch horror style game? Given Lovecraft is public domain, something Cthulhu-esque? I don't know. I guess we haven't thought about it. It hasn't come up in our conversations. Hello from Southwest Missouri. Missouri? M-O? I think it's Missouri. I'm going to prime a Reaper Gut Rags Stitch Golem for Death Wizards. Nice. That sounds cool. Looking to writing my own Highlander profiles to use with the Highlander minis. Oh, that's cool. Played the old Scaventide, the video game for the first time. Fun game. We'll get Darktide. Darktide's a lot of fun. Have I played Scaventide? Or was it Vermintide? I think Vermintide was the video game, now that I come to think of it. Scaventide is the new box. Do you prefer one-piece minis or multi-piece? As I get older, I'm starting to prefer painting one-piece minis as opposed to assembling in the painting. I don't want tons of pieces, but I generally do want some. The problem that I'm finding in a lot of Games Workshop models these days is that there's a lot. There's a lot of pieces, and I don't want that many pieces. Currently playing Conquest First Blood with my 11-year-old son, and we will be adding Spearhead to our rotation. I don't see myself playing Rank and Flank Conquest or full Age of Sigmar anytime soon. I understand that, sure. I think today's choice of indie games is amazing, both wargaming and RPG. I remember the 90s getting games like the original Full Thrust, Dirt Side, and Stargrunt in A5 format. Oh yeah, sure. Are you working on any projects in development? Yeah, we're working on the next issue of Snarl, which is the zine that we did last year that had Tanks for the Apocalypse in it. We're going to be doing Snarl every fall, so probably beginning of November again. We'll be publishing that, and that's a PDF only type thing, but you can print it if you want, because I've formatted it to be printed as a small little booklet. I don't have it around here, but I should probably keep a copy of all of our games in my desk drawer here so I can pull them out and wag them at people. So yeah, we'll have a meeting tonight, but we're in development on that. That game is almost first draft finished. And then like playtesting and all that kind of stuff, and then development and yada yada yada, all that jazz. And then we're trying to decide. Currently we have two options for what the next big spring game is for next year. We're not sure which one we're going with yet, but that game will start getting written probably next month or the month after at the latest. Let's see here. Trying to finish up my Core Space minis before Maladum, the fantasy version of Core Space. Oh, that's cool. Removing mold lines is the only thing I dislike about minis. You should look into 3D printing, like resin printing. That is one of the big benefits to resin printed miniatures, is they never have mold lines. They sometimes have other little things, little boogers and things like that from the supports, I guess, but there's not technically any mold lines. What's your opinion on drilling gun barrels? I do it for most types of games. If they're really super tiny, then no. Like, these little tiny barrels that are in these guys here from the UN or whatever. Like, I'm not drilling the barrels on these tiny little honking guns. No. But on a bolter, on like a Space Marine, yeah, it's not hard. I actually did a video about it on YouTube. I'm just gonna set this over here and hopefully not knock it over. There we go. Indie games is where it's at. Cool kids play Pulp Alley. I've never played Pulp Alley, but I've also never said that I was cool, but I'm familiar with it. If you want an accessible Spearhead box with less minis than a lot of the others, both the Seraphon and Sylvaneth boxes are really good. I can see that, sure. What music would you recommend listening to while playing Space Station Zero? I would think something ambient, something very like spooky and kind of sci-fi ambient. That's what I would think. Any type of game you'd like to design, but you never will? Not really. I mean, if it's something that we want to do, we'll probably do it. We're not particularly focused on the whole line goes up thing. Like, Majestic 13 didn't sell all that well. Like, the people who bought it really enjoyed it and were like, oh, this is very cool and I like this. And I'm very proud of the book as well, because I think it's a cool rule set, and I also think that the layout on it went very well. Took a long time, but I really enjoyed the way that it came out. But that kind of UFO sort of vibe is not a vibe that you pick up a lot in miniature war games. So we didn't expect it to necessarily sell real well. Like, I'll be honest, at this point, Death Wizards has been out for a month and a couple of days, and it has sold more copies than Majestic 13 has, which came out 13 months ago. So, and we kind of expected that because, Death Wizards is a fantasy game. People like fantasy games. People like sci-fi games. And even though Majestic 13 is a sci-fi-ish kind of type game, it's still in a vein that is not normal within miniature games. So we didn't expect it to do super, super well. But we're not here just to make products that are going to like do super well because we're trying to, we're doing stuff because we enjoy it and all that kind of stuff. And again, there will also be, to some degree, underserved populations of folks who will be like, I've always been looking for a game like this, and I love this, and it's fun. And those are the people we want to be able to sell to in some situations. And other times we're going to make something that's popular just because we want to do it as well. Not because it's popular, We just can go, this is a cool concept. We like this concept. Also, I think this concept will do well because it's about, I don't know, whatever, whatever's popular, maybe. Like necromancers, undead, that stuff's popular. Sure. Fantasy in general. Yeah, exactly. Um, let's see here. If Snarling Badger Studios got the IP to produce Hell Comes to Frogtown, would you still be considered indie? That's a good question. Probably, yeah, probably still. I mean, because it would just be the two of us, goofballs. But most likely that's owned by Disney now in some fashion. Though Disney probably doesn't even realize that they own it, but yeah. Disney probably doesn't realize that they own a movie from the late 80s or early 90s, I think. I don't even remember, actually. I think it's late 80s. With Rowdy Piper, where he's one of the last fertile men in America. And so the government is protecting him so he can help to repopulate. But then they send him into the mutant stronghold called Frogtown for reasons. And the lady that's keeping an eye on him, she has a thing in her earring that can shock the chastity belt that they've put on him to keep him in line. It's a weird friggin' movie. You can watch it on YouTube if you want. Hell Comes to Frogtown. But yeah, I bet Disney doesn't realize they own that. But they probably do, because they bought like the company that owns the company that owns the company that made that. Bangarang by Skrillex. Oh, nice. Okay, there you go. It's the hook from a dubstep song. Gotcha. I think I've heard that. But I thought it was something that, what's his name from the, what's his name, Rufio or somebody, didn't he yell that? I don't know. Do you have a process for removing mold lines from CeoCast? I've been having more success with a mold line remover tool and 240 grit than 400 sanding sponges. I think I've probably used little sandy, not the sponges, but like the little emery board type ones. I remember I used those. I've only done 2 or 3 different models in CeoCast. I've never had a huge problem. But they don't scrape the same way normal plastic does. That is part of it. It's a little bit more of a, you have to be a little bit, because it's a slightly softer plastic. So you can't just like scrape with like your X-Acto blade as easily as you do with like normal hard plastic. But it's not, I haven't had huge problems. I remember someone starting a small flame war on Facebook when they claimed that D&D was indie because the original white box set had allegedly been creator owned. That seems, I mean, back then it was, sure, not so much anymore. Let's see here. We call our cat Bangarang. Neat. Our Rex is sometimes a bit Bangarang, if you know what I mean. He just runs around and jumps off of crap. I drill my gun barrels if they're big enough. I'm not doing it with 20mm rifles. Yeah, no, I get that. Shout out to Jugs. Terrible name, but great podcast. Nice. Bangarang is Jamaican slang for an uproar or noisy shenanigans. Sounds like it. Makes sense. Let's see here. Jugs is UK slang for boobs. I think it's American slang for boobs as well. It's for the innuendo jokes. It's just strange to... I don't know. Let's see. Jugs is becoming a juggernaut. Oh, wow. You should get on that podcast. They'd love to have you come over to their podcast. Huh. Blogs are much better than the currently popular social media platforms for many discussions. Yeah. I think everyone needs to bring back podcasts. Or, sorry, blogs. People need to bring back blogs. I'm thinking very heavily that part of the redesign for the Tabletop Minions website is going to be including having a blog. We have a blog on the Snarling Badger Studios website, but we don't update it, frankly, as much as we maybe ought to. But you know, we're just little guys. You know what I mean? As social media slowly crumbles under its weight, it could never support. Blogs are slowly starting to come back. See, that's what I've been talking about. Yeah. Looking forward to the return of BBSs. Ooh, yeah. My good friend Mike Steinecke, he and I had a BBS way back in the day. I remember when we upgraded to a 2400 baud modem. That's, yeah, oh yeah. Like when I first got on the internet, not even the internet, when I first got online, like with Like you would go to a web, not a, I keep saying website. You would go to a BBS, a bulletin board system. You would have to call it directly with your modem to that phone number, and then hope that nobody else was using it, and then you would get on there. And when it would show you, you would see the letter, like in movies and stuff like that, when they're sitting there at some super expensive computer, but the text is going bzz, 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 like that, and you're like, why is it doing that? It's just Hollywood thinks that looks cool. That's the way it used to be back in the 80s. Like it would be, because you would be getting the data so slowly, it would be typing the page basically as you'd go across. And then when you got a faster modem, when you went from 300 to 1200 or 1200 to 2400, all of a sudden it'd be like zip, 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 zip. And you'd be like, whoa, this is going to save so much time. And yeah, so let's not go back to that. But bulletin boards were sort of fun back then. The old BBSs. Got up to type a message, and my cat, Miss Kitty, took over my chair. She's lucky she's so cute. As they say, shuffle your feet, lose your seat. That's the way it works. I don't have that as much these days, but definitely in the morning when I get up, if I get up to, in the morning, I turn around and I look, and usually Maggie has taken my spot in bed. But they don't usually steal my seat. Let's see here. Peachy and Louise, I enjoy. Rob just irritates me, and I can totally see the Jugs thing being his idea, very juvenile. Huh. I've never met... Oh, I take that back. I met Peachy. I met him in an elevator at Las Vegas Open years ago, back when he was still at GW. But I've never met Rob or Louise. Peachy was very nice. I got to type, read that. You guys are cheating and having a ton of money to fund new games and pay for advertising and outstrip your competitors. Is playing fair? Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Looking for a tabletop game that I can use Warhammer 40k miniatures, tired of the rules changing in the game. I would tell you to take a look at One Page Rules, onepagerules.com. You spell out one, it's not the number one. Well, I mean, maybe they own that too, but I don't know if they do or not. What's the art and the thumbnail from? It is from Blackout. This thing here, right? This game. It's an indie game made by Enemy Spotted Studios. So Blackout is spelled B-L-K-O-U-T. So I think Blackout, is it Blackout Game? Yeah, blackoutgame.com. You know what I should have done? This would have been smart. All right, let me share my screen. I think I can do that. We're going to have to do it on the fly. Okay, so you are gonna go away. Go away. Yes, I would like to get rid of that. And then we want to go Mac OS, screen capture. Okay. Oh dear. Display. No. Window. And nope, that's the microphone. Blackout. Perfect. Wait, no. Way too big now. All right. I did this yesterday, as a matter of fact, on the stream as well. Okay, nope, still too big. Still too big. Come on. There we go. Okay, cool. And then we just move you down to here. Done. Okay, so Blackout. It is the ultra tactical sci-fi tabletop war game. I talked about their stuff recently in a video where I was talking about games with skirmish games with potential. So they have a new expansion, I guess, come out called Wet Work, which I haven't even looked at or anything like that yet. But there's a free rules download. There's also awesome miniatures. And the game is designed, you have Manticore. Okay, so basically it's in the future, creeping up around 2200 AD. And we only have, as humans, one colony at this point. And it's this planet called Abol. It's A-B-O-L. And it is under, there's some problems. And there's definitely fighting going on, all kinds of stuff like that. So if you buy the 2-player starter from them, it's $120, and you get 2 full forces. You get hard plastic unit cards and force documents. You get a beautiful rule book, which is this little rule book right here, and you get a full acrylic token set and dials, which is all kinds of little tokens and things like that. You can see them in the picture right over here. But they give you all that kind of stuff too. And there's the models and blah, blah, blah. And they're 3D printed resin. So just FYI. But I think you can also order them in metal, but maybe they're more expensive. They're currently sold out of the metal. So there's that. Which I get. With the resin, they can just print more very quickly, whereas with the metal, they got to order them probably from somebody to get them poured, and it's a whole deal. But yeah, it is a very highly tactical game. And by what I mean by that is it's not like, okay, I'm going to shoot you. All right, hit you again. All right, you've still got 2 wounds left. I've already done a bunch of damage to this guy. In this situation, in this game, you are fighting, and if you get hit, you're pretty much out. It's pretty rare that that's not the case. So the games are shorter. It's got some really interesting kind of vibes to it. Also, you can add to it as you want to. You can also, they have big mechs. And if you ever played the game, the heck is that game? Shoot, I can't think of it. Oh, Titanfall. There you go, Titanfall. If you've ever played Titanfall, in that, like during when you're playing, you can call down the big huge mech that gets dropped from the sky, and then you get into it and then run around and do stuff, right? In this game, it's not so much that you get into this; you just basically call down this big mech, and I think there may be a dude in there, or there may not. I don't know what the lore is, but you at certain points. There's like a certain thing you can do in the actual scenario where it allows you to then pull down a mech, and then when you get to pull one down, your opponent gets to pull one down too if they have one or whatever. So, but you don't have to play with those if you don't want to. That's just kind of a little bit of a modular add-on type of thing. So yeah, with models being destroyed with a single roll of a die, players must rely on their wits, precise positioning, and equipment to win. Forget about special rules and army building. In Blackout, it's all about raw tactics. So it's a cool game. I like it. And they were running demos of it at, they've been running demos of it at Adepticon. They had a booth at Adepticon, but they also were at TMX a couple weeks back or 3 weeks back, whenever it was. And there's 3 factions currently. There's Manticore, which is kind of an Eastern Bloc nation, covert operations, and they are like a kind of like a mercenary unit, maybe, I guess. Then there's also Harlow Kinetic Solutions, which again is another mercenary type group, and then there's also United Nations, which is the group that I just recently picked up over here. I guess there's more stuff coming as well because it's redacted, more forces to come, so that's cool. So yeah, I don't know if you're interested in sci-fi and that kind of stuff, you might want to take a look at it. It is again talking about indie, but they are currently it said massive order volume, expect small delay in fulfillment, which I think is a little bit my fault, maybe at least some, because when they came to TMX, I was hoping to pick this up from them at TMX because they were coming in, they were vending and also running demos. And I got there and they said, well, we don't have any product. And I'm like, well, you could have just come and run demos. You didn't have to buy a booth. And they're like, well, we told you we were going to buy a booth. And so we wanted to come and do that. And I'm like, well, why don't did the product not get shipped? And they're like, well, we're kind of out because you talked about our game in your video recently and we are out of product now. And I was like, oh, sorry. And they're like, well, it's fine. And so I appreciate that. But yeah, so that's where the artwork and the thumbnail's from, if you're interested in that kind of vibe. Let's see here. I do the same thing with basing. Sci-fi gets one style while fantasy gets a different style. Yeah, I think it's a way to be able to use your models in all kinds of different factions or, fashions. I would say how to start making games depends on your goals. If you want to do it for maybe turning into a business, I'm sure start by building an audience. If you want it to do it because you have an idea just to get out of your head, then it's just like any other art, do it. It's true. If you just want to do it and you don't care that anybody ever sees it, yes. Even if you want to make a free game, case in point, Mech 28 by Berserker Bill, or Berserker Works Bill, sorry. In that situation, it makes sense for him because he's been streaming on Twitch here and there, and he's also, got a following on Instagram, and he wants people to be able to see this thing that he made, even though it's for free. If you make a thing that's completely for free, but nobody knows about it, like, sure, you made it, but generally, in most situations, the point of even just regular old art is to get so that maybe somebody sees it. You know what I mean? Not always. Sometimes it's just the act of doing it. That's for sure too. But anyway, yeah, that's kind of the trick. I would be very frank with you and say also don't expect that your first game is going to be a banger. Some people will say, yeah, but Reign in Hell was pretty good, and that was your first game. Well, no, it wasn't either of our first games. Together, the two of us, yes, it was our first game working together. But Vince had produced several games in the past, and I'd produced several games in the past. So, yeah. Let's see here. If you want to do it, I spoke to you at Gen Con last year about building an audience. Your advice was invaluable, and I appreciate it. I hope you and Vince keep doing well with Snarling Badger. Well, thanks, Colton Smith. I can't play any Snarling Badger games because I can't find miniatures of Snarling Badgers anywhere. I mean, that is a problem. Lose a mini, you must take a shot. I could... Like, that would be kind of cool if that Necromolds game, if it, instead of being Play-Doh, was finger jello. Because then you'd be like, oh, ooh, orange. And so that'd be fun. Sticky, probably, eventually. The boutique label has an air of snobbishness in my mind. A little bit. I could see that. Yeah, yeah. As aesthetics, indie trends to counterculture, while boutique tends to following mainstream. Size is a separate axis of definition. Boutique tends to follow mainstream. I guess I don't know what you mean by that. Does that make... Huh. Well, maybe. I don't know. Listening while walking the dog. Nice. Talking about Quar, such a fantastic game. Love their minis. Yeah, I've got 3 of the Crusaders built, and I'm going to prime them up and then kind of test on them. And then I also want to do the other guys, Croftran, which I think I've mispronounced already. But yeah. Good morning from very gray Seattle. Are you ready for Adepticon hotel selection on Wednesday? I will probably not have to do it this year for the first time in a long time, because I'll be going with Army Painter again, I believe. And so they'll be doing the hotel block, because them being an exhibitor, I think they get access to the hotel stuff. The exhibitors get access to hotel stuff before other folks do, I think. So last year, even though I was there for for Army Painter at Adepticon, I didn't know whether they were taking care of hotels or not at the time when it went live. So I got in there and I got a hotel, even though I ended up not getting a hotel in the main building, sadly. And then when they got hotel rooms, again, a bit further away, I couldn't get rid of my hotel room because I had used my AARP card, because I'm old, to get a discount. And when I did that, they were like, yeah, you got a discount, so you can't cancel. So I was like, oh, okay, well. So this time, from what I understand, I personally will not have to do that, I think, because I'm technically going kind of as an exhibitor. You know what I mean? So there you go. We'll see how that goes, though. I'm actually going to reach out to make sure on Monday so that I know. Cat cameo over the right shoulder. Yeah, Margot came by here for a bit and hung out. Good evening from Malaysia. I got a printer recently so I could print out as many minis as I want, but what scale would you or chat recommend I print my minis so I can be compatible with most games? Usually about 28 millimeter scale. And what they mean by 28 millimeter scale is that generally from the eyes, I believe, to the bottom of the feet is about 28 millimeters high. That's what they refer to generally as 28 millimeter scale. But anywhere in between there is close to some degree. You know, I talk about scale a lot. Like, not everybody has to be exactly the same height. You know, my wife and I are about a foot difference. I'm about a foot taller than she is, but we're technically the same scale. You know, sometimes people are tall, sometimes people are short. It's fine. I spy creature friend out. Yep, Margot. But then she, I don't know, probably got tired of me talking. There's always someone who tell you that you're wrong. It's true. It's true. Annihilation Text, how you doing? I started this hobby in the late 70s. 25 millimeter seemed the standard scale, has crept upwards ever since. Sure. Got Blackout recently, just trying to find time to paint the models. Love the stripped down rules and the early feel with only 3 factions, although I think this is an iteration from Kill Wager. Yeah, I think that was their earlier game, though I don't know really much about it. First entry into indie games was Death Wizards. Nice. Nice to hear. Cheap Gen Con booths give me flashbacks to my old Armorcast days. Indeed, yeah. Warning from the West Virginia Panhandle. Bought the Blackout Game Starter set and can't wait to get the minis painted and start playing. Thanks for your recommendations, Uncle Adam. Absolutely. I want to play it. Jeremy gave Zambies some stuff for it, so hopefully soonish. Nice. Trench Crusade is indie too, and its mechanics seem really cool on paper. Shame not many people are interested in other games other than Warhammer in Poland. Yeah, I mean, but again, it takes deciding I'm gonna try to teach people about this is really what it is. I'm on the fence with Quar. Quar fence. Blackout cards make it easy to start a game without looking at many books. True. Well, and there's not many books really. There's like literally there's like this is the book. So yeah, and I think that's cool. I'm liking Death Wizards a lot. I'm currently working on building up some minis so I can play it. Nice. Did a painting demo at my local shop. Turnout was great. We're thinking of doing bases next month. Always, anyway, to get good affordable bases, what's a good general size? Probably 32 millimeter if you could find them. That's probably one of the better ones. Osprey started with mini painting guides, then expanded into military history books and then games. Yep. Good time of day to you. How you doing, Terrence? Where are we at? Okay. Let's see here. Basement stay dry? Yeah, well, I mean, no, but not in weird, unexpected ways. There's a spot that always leaks, and then it goes to the kind of the middle of the basement where there's a drain, and then it's like, yeah, it happened, yeah, but it's not terrible. We just know not to put stuff there because it'll get wet if someone walks by with like a soda, then just the moisture from that soda sometimes will make the room leak in there. But I did finally get the I paid a guy to clean the gutters, so I think it was less than it would have been normally because of all the rain. But so far so good. Fallout is the Wild West of IPs for me, something I really can't bring myself to care about. I'm interested in tactics, but I messed around with Wasteland Warfare, and it was too board gamey for me, frankly. Like, that was the problem. And also, I was in this spot where I was really not super interested in Fallout. I have gotten more interested in Fallout recently, partially due to the TV show, and this is going to sound stupid, also partially because of a thing that I missed in the lore that I just never thought about, and then it started to bother me. I played Fallout 1, Fallout 2, Fallout 3, Fallout 4, Fallout Tactics, which was a PC game that was all turn-based and like third person or isometric or something. I played the Brotherhood of Steel video game on the Xbox, I think. There's been a lot of different games that I've played. I've never played 76, played New Vegas. Anyway, I was getting to a point sometime around Fallout 4 where I was just like, why do we... So it's the bombs dropped in 2077, which means that we like got to where we are now here in 2024 and then decided, you know what's cool? The 1950s. Let's go back to that and make things. And I'm like, why did this happen? Initially, I just never really thought about it much when I first started playing those games when I was younger, but it started to bother me more and more. And then at some point, like literally within the last year, someone's like, well, it's alternate history, kind of. Fallout is, yes, it's the future. The bombs dropped in 2077, but the reason we got to that point was because the transistor was never invented. So that's why things are different, is because it's alternate history, which never had clicked with me the entire time I've been playing those damn games. So I was getting kind of tired of it, and I was like, this is stupid. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, it's because of this. It's alternate history. And I was like, oh. And then the TV show came out, and the TV show I enjoyed quite a bit too. So I don't necessarily see myself playing Fallout 76. I'll take a look at Fallout 5. We'll see how that goes, if and when that ever comes out. But I am definitely interested in Fallout Tactics. I'm not interested in Fallout Wasteland Warfare, but not because I'm not so much interested in Fallout anymore, but more just because the rules, it was just so many tokens and cards. I'm like, this is very board gamey to me, and it's not of my interest area. But there's less of that from what I understand, to some degree. I think there's still some tokens and cards, but there's less of it in Fallout Tactics from what I understand. James Hewitt does good work. He's the guy who made it. So I'm interested in that, but I don't know how we'll see how things go. Let's see here. Oops, everything moved. I like the look of Blackout. Check out those wolf paintings on the helmets. Love stuff like that. Sure, sure. I think if you want success as an indie wargame maker, it's 100% about building the community. Sure. Kill Team 3.0 better be good. The whole obstruction line of sight is god awful. We haven't even heard about it yet, have we? It's getting real bright again. So yeah, no, I was thinking about this just recently. Basically, we're going to need to either hear about there's a new edition coming of Kill Team at Nova, which is at the end of August, or maybe they've decided to push it back and just not, do the 3-year thing, which would be very weird since they've been really focused on the 3-year thing for a while now. But maybe they've decided that the specialist games, such as they are, the games that are not, it's what that they used to call that particular division, because there's the people who do 40K, there's the people who do Age of Sigmar, and then there's specialist games, which is the group that does kind of everything else, which also includes Warcry, includes Kill Team, etc. Blood Bowl, Necromunda, and it would be very interesting to see if they've maybe decided, because Necromunda's never technically been on a 3-year cycle. If it would have been, we would have had 2 new editions since it first came out in 2017. There would have been one in 2020 and one in 2023. And that one has never had a new edition, and they've added things, they've tweaked books, they've done this, they've made a buttload of books, but they've never really been full blown, yeah, this is a new thing. Whereas as an example, the most recent one was probably Warcry, where they made a new edition of Warcry, but they didn't change it drastically, which was nice. That being said, I would kind of like them to change. Personally, I would like them to change Kill Team drastically and make a 3rd version and see how that works out. I would kind of like them to go back to the old ways, but I know I'm the only one who thinks that. Yeah, so I don't know. It'll be very interesting to see how that goes. But you would have expected to have heard about it by now. But if we don't hear about it by Nova, them going, oh, it's coming, then I don't know if it's coming this year. That would be an interesting move as well. Kingdom Death is a great example of a boutique game versus any that I've named so far. Yeah, I could see, but that would definitely, it's fancy. That's true. Gummy bears used as minis get sticky. Oh yeah, I bet so. That's a good point. I have a room already, but I'm hoping to get a block room so it's not super expensive. True, yeah, I can understand that. That makes sense. Taking me a while to register it, but is that a Nintendo VR set with advanced red headache technology in the background? Yes, up there. Yeah, that's a Nintendo. That's a what do they call it? Virtual Boy. Virtual Boy. Let's see here. Shorter people also get smaller guns. Well, I suppose maybe. OSR is aesthetically boutique. It is recognizably part of the same vein as 40K, Infinity, Stargrave, etc. Blackout seems more indie because it abandons the roll to hit, roll to wound paradigm. Yeah, maybe. By OSR, do you mean OPR? Hello from France. Have you ever tried cardboard terrain kits? I have in mind ones from Battle Systems. Tinker Turf is the only ones that I've used. Tinker Turf is a company that makes, they're, printed, color printed, and you glue them together and slide them together, tab A, slot B, that kind of thing. But yeah, that's the only one. That's the only cardboard stuff that I can think of that I've used. Currently working on some mummies for Death Wizards. Next up will be a set of giant skeletons. I have a giant skeleton, but he's not. He's not quite. I don't think I can. My 2 forces that I'm thinking about are Spirit Caller, which he wouldn't be a Spirit Caller guy because he's not a ghost, and then secondly, Dread Horde Master, and then I'm like, oh wait, he can't be in a Dread Horde Master group because he's too high of a rating. So I don't know. He'll have to be in a 3rd group down the road, but he was fun to paint. So, all right. Well, folks, I apologize because I again did not catch up on the chat as well as I would have liked, but we're at about 11 o'clock-ish here. So thanks to everybody for coming by. Check out some indie games if you're interested, and if you've been listening and you've been hearing about some indie games, maybe take a look at those online and see what you think. Look for some indie game battle reports, and if you're going to look for those, you're probably going to find them generally over at Ash Barker's channel, Gorilla Miniature Games. Gorilla like the Freedom Fighters, not like the Primates, although technically I guess Freedom Fighters would also be Primates because I'm a Primate. And anyway, yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Check him out as well. And other people who also do that kind of stuff. But yeah, search YouTube for battle reports for indie games that you want to try out. And yeah, and again, like with the Quar one, that one, I saw a nice battle report from the folks over at on Tabletop, aka what used to be Beasts of War. So that's a good place to look for that as well if you're interested. So that's pretty much it. I'll see you folks again soon. I'll be streaming again tomorrow night on Twitch, 7 p.m. my time, Central Time, here in the States. So drop by there if you'd like to, if it's not too late for you. And we'll just hang out in hobby. I'll be working on possibly some Skaven because, you know, I can actually now show you folks that stuff as of Saturday, but you know, I didn't make a video about it or anything like that. But I can, you know, work on that stuff on Twitch. It'll be fun. So yeah, thanks to everybody for coming by, and have yourselves a good rest of your day. Stay safe, and thanks for watching.